I mean, and I don't care what you do for a living, best paying job in the world, you can't afford $1,000 a day cocaine habit.
Welcome to Self-Made and Sober. I'm your host, Andrew Lassise with selfmade-coaching.com. And in this podcast, it's my job to interview people who are not only crushing it in business, but have also struggled with addiction in the past and are in long-term recovery. Be sure to join our Facebook group where we help entrepreneurs grow and scale their business at facebook.com/groups/SMC Mastermind, like Self-Made Coaching Mastermind. I hope you enjoy the show, and be sure to subscribe and rate the show afterwards so you can get notified each Friday when we put out a new episode. Welcome to the Self-Made and Sober podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lassise, and with me today is Randy Anderson. Randy, oh my God, the laundry list of things that you have going on is quite impressive, and that's coming from someone that's got a laundry list themselves. But been sober since January 10th, 2005. Randy, how are you doing?
Good. I'm fabulous. I mean, thank you for having me on today. And yeah, I think you just said something like, so everyone I know that works in this space or is anyway involved in the prevention, treatment, recovery side of addiction or the field has a long laundry list. At least those that are actually, I think, accomplishing things. We tend to overcommit ourselves, but yeah.
Yeah, I've had some people on here where it's like, how do you want me to even introduce you? Like, there have been some people where it's just like, all right, best-selling author, or that you did 10 years on TV, or that you have an award-winning podcast, or it's like you're doing too good, you're crushing it too much. So let's get into, what was your background like? What caused you to get into recovery? Everything's good and you decided I should get sober too? What's happening in 2005?
So first I just start by saying my name is Randy Anderson, and I am a person living in long-term recovery. And what that means to me is I haven't had to use any drugs or alcohol or mood-altering substances since January 9, 2005. And because of my recovery, I've been able to do things that I never even thought were possible. But more importantly, I have healthy relationships. I vote, I own a home, I pay taxes. I do all those things that really normal people do, which is something that I hadn't done in my active addiction very much. So for me, that's really the important stuff. But how it happened for me is, I think my story isn't that different from a lot of people. I mean, I remember getting drunk for the first time when I was like 14 years old. And really, I remember how that moment is pretty clear to me that it helped medicate or take away the pain that I felt. I grew up in a very abusive household. I love my father now, but unfortunately he grew up on a farm and where children were treated differently, I guess I could say. I was abused physically, emotionally, mentally, just about, other than sexually, thank God I never had that occur, but every other way you can imagine, I probably had some abuse from my father. And I really didn't know as an adolescent, the damage that causes. And then you find something like liquor or alcohol, and all of a sudden you have a blackout incident and you realize that it took away some pain, right? And I think that was probably the triggering moment where, like, they say 1 in 10 people have this addiction thing in their brain. Well, I think that was for me the light switch. Like, once that turned on, it started that path. And of course I progressed there to marijuana in my late teens. And then I met cocaine in my early 20s. And that was what really did it for me. Once I was introduced to that drug, there was no going back. No other drugs really mattered to me anymore, although I tried probably every one under the sun. But the one that really did it was cocaine. And that progressed pretty quickly to where near the end of my addiction career, I was spending about $1,000 a day on cocaine. I was using 10.
Not bad.
Yeah, right. I mean, and I don't care what you do for a living, best paying job in the world, you can't afford $1,000 a day cocaine habit. I wasn't rich by any means, but I had a very successful small construction company. I was doing a lot of great, construction work and making good money. Eventually that went away and stopped working and stopped, maxing out credit cards and selling off equipment and whatever it took to get money. And eventually it came to the point where I was no longer able to fund my addiction. And so for me, there was a point where a friend of mine got in a lot of trouble with some really bad people, and I was able to bail him out. And though that turned me into a drug dealer, really overnight. And the last year or year and a half of my addiction, I was selling drugs primarily as my income, and I was paying my bills with it. I was paying my mortgage with it. I was paying my loans off, even paying taxes with drug money. Because funny enough, the thing I was most scared about is wasn't even scared of selling drugs to getting in trouble. I was more scared of getting audited by the IRS.
That's Capone. That's how they got him.
It's funny. I'm a huge fan of the mob. That's one part of history I've always loved studying. And the only thing they could get Capone on was tax evasion, right? And so I don't know why, but that stuck in my head. Stupid thing to think about. But it was my biggest worry. And so I eventually, did that for a while. And one day, I was buying drugs from a really bad group of people from Mexico. And they had said to me, we're taking a break. We had been informed that we might be getting some heat. And so they left, and I panicked. And I didn't care about the money. I didn't even really care about selling drugs to people. I could care less. I needed my drugs. I was using 10 to 14 grams of cocaine a day at that point. And there's no way I could go without a heavy supply of my drug. So I just started finding other people. I started making phone calls, and I found a connection that a friend of a friend knew, from a guy from California, get me the amounts that I would need to survive. And that led me to, within a few weeks, being raided by a DEA task force.
Isn't it crazy the amount of resourcefulness we magically have when backs against the wall? There's so many entrepreneurs that are like, I can't land my first client. I can't figure this out. I don't understand SEO. And it's like, well, if you have $1,000 a day cocaine habit and your source gets cut off, look how resourceful you are. How long did it take you to figure that out?
48 hours.
48 hours.
48 hours.
Back against the wall when you have to make it work. That's what a lot of people need, back against the wall. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the book Profit First.
I've read it, but I've heard of it, yeah.
Yeah, I think his name, it's a weird pronunciation, like Mike Michalowicz, something along those lines. But basically the idea of the book is you get your money from sales, and then twice a month you put a portion away into a Profit First account and a tax account. And it's money that you can't touch. It's off on the side, but you have to make do with what's left. So it forces you to be profitable, and it forces you to have your back against the wall. So this is essentially what you're doing with your cocaine habit, except for it's a little different in your situation. I don't know if people would shine it in as wonderful of a light, but I like to look for silver lining in things. And I can see a $250,000 a year habit, or I'm sorry, $365,000. I was thinking business days, but you did cocaine on non-business days as well, right? Holidays too?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. And it's funny. I'm a very good salesman. Everywhere I've ever worked and sold stuff since I was 20 years old, I've done extremely well. My first year out of prison, I made $106,000 I was working as a home improvement salesman. So you're absolutely correct. And as a counselor, I always tell clients, if you can transfer those same skills into and I always make a joke that I was in pharmaceutical sales for a while, but it's the same thing. It's absolutely. So yeah, 100%. A lot of those skills that we've used to do illegal activity are completely transferable into a legal business. That's the best part.
Yeah, some of my best salesmen of all time. I mean, you look at them and it's like tatted up and down in juvie, tattoos on the face, and it's like over the phone. This guy is the smoothest talker in the world. And as long as we're not doing Zoom calls, video chat with the customers, it's just like, oh, Steven's such a nice guy. And it's like, I mean, he is nice now that he's sober, but I mean, he looks a little rough. But I mean, understanding that resourcefulness, and you're exactly right. You can transfer that type of personality. It's not just a one-to-one. It's not just, I need drugs, I'm good at getting drugs. But if you set a goal and you need to hit it and you're relentless about reaching it, that's a very good strategy, not just in sales and sobriety, but just all around. If you're shooting for something, that's a really good strategy. Do it like you are going to die if you don't.
No, 100%. I mean, it's, yeah. So then so anyway, so I started selling and I got raided by a DA task force, which led me down a whole different road. When I think about that particular day, it's very emotional. I remember that morning I went out to buy my sister a new lawnmower. She had called and her lawnmower broke and I had a lot of cash. So I'm like, no problem. I'll just go buy you a new lawnmower, go to Home Depot, buy her lawnmower, went assemble it, came home. And as I pulled into my parking lot, I got surrounded by a good 10 or 12 vehicles. And of course, they were DEA all over their bulletproof vest and guns drawn and police dogs and all that stuff. And I went up. They hauled me up to my condominium where they were already done pretty much searching it and located all the drugs. And of course, I smart enough at that time probably where I just said, they're threatening you. You're going to get 5 years for this, 5 years for this. I mean, they have laundry list right off the bat, and you're looking there. By the time they're done, they're telling you like you're going to serve 25 years in prison. And that first words out of my mouth after all that was like, I would like to see a lawyer. And then that ends the questioning. However, though, I always say, fast forward through a few things. They did allow me. One thing I remember is I got to go to treatment while I was on pretrial release, and my sister had said, "Hey, you should go get a Rule 25, which is an assessment tool in Minnesota to get into treatment." And they said, "What is that?" So they came to the jail. They did an assessment. They referred me to a treatment program. They let me out of jail to go to treatment. I wasn't a role model client. I relapsed. I brought drugs to the treatment center. I got high in the treatment center. I got sent back to jail a couple times. I broke all the rules, except for I didn't mess with the female clients. That was one rule. I just lied for whatever reason. I knew I shouldn't cross.
Isn't that the whole point of rehab, to bring drugs to people? I mean, that's your target demographic, the people that want to get clean but are still kind of on the fence. I mean, you're basically shooting fish in a barrel at that point, but not hooking up with clients. You're not taking, that's what everybody does. I mean, my story was different than that in treatment, but I mean, that was pretty much what everyone was doing. Yeah. I digress. So you're in treatment, you're selling drugs.
I was going to jail. I brought drugs back to get high. Okay. I did take another client down with me. I had a roommate, and of course I told him I had these drugs, and a lot of bad things led up to this. Like I got a vehicle stolen, and I just decided I got the efforts and like whatever, I'll just get high. And so one thing I didn't do, I didn't sell drugs, but I did bring a significant amount of drugs to the treatment center. And of course I got caught, and I took my roommate down with me. I had sentencing. Here's the funny thing is that was Sunday. Tuesday I had sentencing for my federal case. And I go to the courtroom, and the judge says, "Hey, hello, Mr. Anderson. I heard you had a rough weekend." I'm like, wow, he knows about this? I didn't know they shared that information, of course. And so he said, "Did you take a UA when you got here?" I said, "I did." He goes, "Do you know the results?" I don't. He says, "Well, you tested positive for cocaine, and because of that, I'm not going to allow anyone under the influence of a substance to sign any plea agreement. Mr. Marshals, will you please take Mr. Anderson into custody?" They arrested me right there in the courtroom. Wow, like no way did I know that was going to happen. I was all prepared. Now that I work in treatment, I know how that works. Like that happens. Like that's what happens, right? So anyways, eventually though, I remember getting released, and I got assigned to a new counselor. And I'll never forget, this was probably the day that I decided to at least give recovery a shot, or sobriety, however you like to word it. So I was in the UA bathroom at the same treatment center. They let me come back to the residential program. And senior counselor, gentleman by the name of Mark Lindgren, amazing man who's been to prison and done, like his story is like, you think your story's significant until you hear someone else's story. You're like, holy crap. So anyways, we're in the UA bathroom, and he just starts ripping into me like, "You're the dumbest mother effer I've ever met. You have a federal case pending. You got a state charge. You're bringing drugs to a treatment center. You're taking clients down with you." And he goes, "You know what? I don't know why I'm wasting my breath, because this recovery shit isn't for you." And I thought that was the line that changed it for me, because I'm very competitive. I grew up in an athletic household where my dad would say things to me. There's no one remembers who won second place, and second place is for losers and all that stuff. So that was kind of the father switch he clicked in my head. Like, don't tell me what I can't do. And so I decided like, I'm just going to start listening. And next thing I know, I was like doing recovery. The unfortunate thing was after all that, and I completed about 10 months. I always say it took me 10 months to complete a 60-day program. That's what I was supposed to go to treatment for, was 60 days. But overall, it took about 10 months, which is really what people need. And I remember, though, going to sentencing, and this is probably by far the worst day of my entire life is, well, the judge says, Mr. Anderson, I see that you've completed treatment, and I've gotten a lot of letters from community members. You're volunteering here and there and doing stuff. For all those good reasons, I'm going to give you a break today. I'm going to sentence you on the lowest level of your level, lowest months on your level. And those of us involved with the criminal justice system, there's a staircase that we are all very intimately familiar with, and it's the sentencing guidelines. And he says, I'm going to sentence you to 87 months in prison. And I thought, wow. So I'm a first-time non-violent drug offender with no criminal history, and you're going to put me in prison for 87 months. I mean, this, I just couldn't believe it. And that was probably, that worst day. I remember leaving there and calling my counselor and saying, I'm done. I'm going to go get high. And he convinced me to come have coffee with him. And I knew I shouldn't have went because I knew he was going to talk me out of it, and he did. But I stayed sober ever since, unfortunately.
That dick.
Yeah, right. I know. I just wanted to go, honestly, I mean, I was like, this could end my life, and I really wouldn't give a shit at that point. I mean, really, I'm going to go to prison for 7+ years, and what do I care? What does it matter anymore? But he convinced me otherwise, and thank God he did. And I've been, in recovery ever since. And unfortunately, I had to go to prison, and I always say I was fortunate. I only served just a little under 60 months, so just a little under 5 years. When I was think back, though, I mean, my maximum sentence for all the felonies, for the 3 felonies, was 156 months. So to serve just under 60, I probably say it's a blessing. Many people are like, are you kidding me? I'm like, I'm not. I'm lucky back then, because it could have been way worse. And however, now, so I work in criminal justice reform. I'm a board member for the Minnesota Second Chance Coalition. And I didn't realize the racial disparities that exist until, I saw it in prison, but it didn't make sense to me. Why are people with the same exact or similar crimes as mine, however, they're not white, they got the 108 months. I got the 87 months on the same bracket, but they got because they were black. So I would say, thank God I'm white. I mean, that's probably the reason why I didn't get even worse, because it could have been way worse for me. But yeah, so I did prison. I got out and I started to get my life back, and it's funny when you're in prison, there's a lot of doom and gloom, and they tell you, just expect less. You have 3 felonies now. Things are going to be more difficult for you, and I beat bull crap. I don't expect less. I shoot high. I'm a classic overachiever, right? And I was successful. I did that out of prison. I had to take a telemarketing job, and very humbling to be in your 40s making $8.50 an hour, sitting at a phone for 8 hours a day, making appointments for sales guys, which that used to be me. So here I am. I did it as a requirement of my halfway house, and once I did finish that, I got it back into sales, and I was successful. My life wasn't very fulfilling, but I was paying my bills and getting my life back. Then one day I was at a job, and I switched jobs a couple times. I was doing well, but the owner and I got in a little disagreement. He fired me, and that was an eye-opener. I'd never been fired from a job in my life. And that's when my lovely wife said, maybe it's time to change paths. So that's when I enrolled in college. I always say the second scariest day of my life was driving to college. The first was driving to prison. I was 43 years old. I thought, there's no way I have a GED that I got while I was incarcerated. There's no possible way I can go to college and be successful. Well, I always say God, and whatever your God is, puts people in your life. Sometimes they have more faith in you than you have in yourself. I'm lucky. I've had a lot of people in my life like that, and my wife is one of those, and she knew it. She knew I could be successful. She pushed me. I would say she coerced me, or convinced me that maybe college is a good idea. But I went and I completed 5 years and got 2 degrees, and I'm a licensed alcohol and drug counselor. But going to college was probably the biggest thing to ever occur to me. I opened my world up to things like criminal justice reform and the recovery community, and just a whole host of things that I don't think I would have ever had access to had I not went to college, to be honest. I think that was a huge change for me. So that was a really quick overview of a 7-year span, but that's kind of what it was like. And today I get to do really incredible things. I mean, I've led marches and rallies in front of the White House, and in front of the Health and Human Services building in Washington, D.C., in front of Purdue Pharma headquarters, in front of the Arthur M. Sackler Museum and the Smithsonian. Just things really, that's my life. I work with Senator Amy Klobuchar's in her office, and she was the prosecuting attorney for my state case in 2004. And I used to hate that woman. Her signature was on all of my seizure papers, and now I work closely with her to try to help pass new legislation to fight addiction and opioid epidemic. And like, wow, really, this is my life. I mean,
That's incredible.
I sit on a board for my local sheriff, so the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office. I'm a community advisory board member. And we had our first meeting about 6 weeks ago, and we were taking photographs for our ID badge to get in and out of the building. And I shared with my board members that the last time I was in this building getting a photograph taken, I was being booked into custody. And now I'm taking a photograph to get in and out of the building. I mean, like, really, this is like, oftentimes I think this is really a dream, and I'm just like going to wake up and none of it will be true. Honestly, that's what it feels like.
Yeah, I have a friend who he was I forget what the position was, but he was basically at the ribbon cutting ceremony on a new prison. And that night he was the first person incarcerated in that same prison.
Wow. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So fast forward a bit to where we're at today. I'm curious, what does your morning ritual look like? Is there any sort of routine that happens that gets yourself on the right foot?
Whether I like it or not, I'm usually up by about 5 or 5:30. That's why I'm usually in bed fairly early, because if I go to bed at 2 a.m. or 9 at night, I'm still waking up at 5 or 5:30. So to get my sleep, I try to be in bed well before 10 o'clock. Anyway, so I get up and I get my coffee. I jump right onto my laptop. Almost the first thing I do every morning is I do run 7 social media accounts. So I get on there and I check the alerts. I see what's going on in the news. Of course, I get my Google alerts for my the Washington Post stuff, and I have like set up for, of course, as many of my friends know, I've been adamant about organizations taking pharmaceutical money. So I have Google alerts set up to alert me of anything new information that might be coming out. And I kind of check those alerts. Funny thing, one of my favorite rituals every morning is I go on my Facebook and I wish everyone that's birthday is that day a happy birthday, like no matter what, like how well we know each other or not. Now, you have 4,700 friends on Facebook, but it's, 10 to 15 people every day that it's their birthday. And I just think it's really cool to start the day with like just saying, hey, happy birthday. And then take my dog out quickly. And then I just get, I have, like, someday I'll say I'll get paid for a lot of the stuff I do, because right now a lot of it's just voluntary, but that's how my day starts every day. It's just really right here, right where I'm sitting right now for the first couple of hours, returning emails, checking social media alerts, seeing what's happening in the world. And that's how I spend the first couple hours almost every day.
So with all those things on your plate, do you have any sort of tools that you use for your productivity, or is it all just up in your head?
Yeah, it's mostly all up here. It's funny, so really good friend of mine, Sean O'Donnell, who we worked together for a couple of years. He's Ryan Hampton's partner. Sean is one of those really organized guys that has like those kinds of things you're talking about. And he's tried to get me into using that. And it's just, I don't know. Like Hootsuite and things like that. Like all the time, like you should really, and I still haven't done it. Like I just still keep doing it just on the fly and out of my head. But yeah.
Yeah, I have just a reminder each Monday to fill up the buffer queue, but buffer Hootsuite, it's all the same thing.
I don't know what that is, and I probably should learn, because it would probably make my life a lot easier. But
the idea behind it is that you're batching all of the work that you're doing. It's just batched all at once, so you could sit down for an hour and set up all 7 social media accounts for the next week or 2 weeks. And then all you're doing is just responding to the responses from the people that see it. And as long as it's not time sensitive, and I mean, it depends. I mean, if there's breaking news, obviously this strategy doesn't work. But if there's like a rhetorical question that's trying to get engagement and things like that, that's one of those things. But everybody's got their own path. But I've been a fan of Buffer for the last couple years, and someone else had told me, they're like, yeah, Facebook punishes it and you need to be doing it manually. So neither here nor there. I mean, everyone's got this is the rules, or it's not the rules, or
the nice thing is, I mean, honestly, so when you follow folks like Ryan Hampton on Facebook or other people that are really socially engaged, they post great content and you can just steal it all the time. I mean, honestly, and it's not, I mean, really, that's an easy strategy. Like, or you certain pages that have the information I need for my pages, I just follow those pages and they're posting daily all the time. So I'm like, oh, great, I'll just share that to my page. And I don't know. So that strategy has been working. I probably could find more efficient ways for sure.
It's just like everything in life. But what are some of the routines that you have just in your day to day that kind of guides you through? Or is it all just like you are on top, on fire 24/7?
So what I really like to do is every day. So, I mean, I am, 4 or 5 times a week, I'm having some type of lunch or coffee with people in the recovery community, like just to stay engaged and see how I can get them engaged. Cause there's, I don't know if it's like people ask me this all the time and I don't have a set routine. It comes to me. I mean, I'm scheduling, like, funny thing, when you try to schedule coffee with me right now, and I'm scheduling 3 weeks out to have coffee with someone because that's how my crazy life is. Like, my Google Calendar is just ridiculous. And if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't exist for me in my life. My wife and I made that agreement. So, but it's just really, I'm just always, things that are important. So I'm now, one of the things a part-time gig I just started, which I think is really cool. So I'm the peer recovery specialist for the Ramsey County Treatment Court, peer recovery specialist supervisor for the Ramsey County Treatment Court. So that's a specialty courts, which drug courts, I don't like calling them drug courts. In fact, I wish they were called recovery courts myself. But that's really cool. I mean, in 2004, I was a participant in the Hennepin County drug court. And now I'm a supervisor. Hennepin County is our largest county. Ramsey County is our second largest county. Now I'm a supervisor in one of those same courts. It's like, really? That's another one of those full circle moments. Like, are you kidding me?
It's like the kids at baseball camp that like become the the mentors. Right. Yeah, the coach.
Yeah. So, I have that twice a week now. And my local RCO, Minnesota Recovery Connection, who I love and I've been involved with since I went to college in 2014. They have a free space. So I do a lot of stuff on the other side of the river. I'm in Minneapolis, there in St. Paul, but a lot of my stuff occurs in St. Paul. So I'll just go over there and hang out for a couple hours and return emails and just kind of get for me, being in that space and I know it's all recovery orientated and it just feels good and it feels at home. But I don't know if I have a specific routine. It's kind of, if I look at my calendar now, this week is, other than today, I have a dentist appointment, which I'm scared to death of. I hate the dentist, but my week is already booked out. Like, I have everything scheduled, and I don't waver from that schedule a lot unless something cancels or like that. So that's maybe that's my routine. It's just getting my week scheduled in advance.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if we dig a bit, like, your tool that you use is the calendar.
My wife and I, we have an agreement, like, both of us, if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't exist. And so we obviously share our calendars, but that's super important for our lives. Like, if anything, even if it's going to dinner, we make sure it gets on the calendar. So it's definitely blocked off. There's no question. Neither of us schedule something over it, blah, blah, things like that. So, yeah.
So do you have any books that you recommend to people for trying to either improve their lives or good resources for recovery?
So, first I'd start off by saying I have the attention span of a gnat, and I don't like to read. That's a bad way to phrase that. I don't like to read books. I read tons of articles every day. Like, I bet if I put together all the articles I read in a day, it probably equals some type of book. I just can't sit down and read like a book. I love audiobooks. Like, if it's on audio, great. So I think the one that I've heard or listened to recently Ryan Hampton's book, American Fix. Like, if you haven't read that, it not only talks about the opioid epidemic that our country is facing, but it talks about the addiction crisis. Because really, like, I know we're hyper focused on opioids right now, and I get that. With 70,000 people dying every year, we should be hyper focused on opioids. But we really have an addiction crisis that we can't. Once we solve the opioid epidemic, and we will, because we're a smart country, we'll figure it out. There's already a meth epidemic that no one's talking about. We've had an alcohol epidemic for how long? We have a pornographic epidemic, a porn epidemic, where people, we have gambling problems. So I think we need to figure out the addiction thing better. Like, we don't, and I'm one of those. So I push back against the treatment system a lot, and even though it worked for me, what currently some of our systems, but I'm sick and tired of blaming the client or the patient for all of our misfortunes. Like they haven't hit bottom yet. They're not ready. Like bull crap. Like we're saying those things, we're killing people. Like what am I doing wrong as a clinician? And what is my program doing wrong as a program where we can't get these people the help the proper or the right help they need? So I'm not saying as a person you don't have some personal responsibility for that, but we as an industry also have a responsibility for that. So I think Ryan Hampton, his book American Fix, talks a lot about that, and I think it's a great read. If you haven't, everyone should check it out.
And I'll be sure to have the links on the show notes afterwards for anybody that's looking to check that book out. And I know I'll be doing it myself. So, I mean, we touched briefly on the system itself needs to be tailored better. But if somebody's in recovery or new to recovery, what strategies would you recommend that they take in their own hands to get sober?
Yeah, so I mean, get connected. I think, I mean, I don't like Johan Hari's title, what we thought we knew about addiction, we were all wrong. That title, it's not true. We do know a lot about addiction, and it's not all wrong. But what I do agree with him on is the opposite of addiction is connection. And what happens in early recovery, so we come out of treatment or whatever help we got, and we have this recovery bubble where all of a sudden, wow, everything looks rainbows and butterflies and all this stuff. And then it dies off quickly, right? And our life starts to go back, and all of a sudden we're bored and we don't know what to do. So, and the problem is because we're not making new connections, like we're not becoming connected to those recovery resources. Like there's tons of, today's world, there's probably parts of the country where it's not great. Like I have a friend in Montana who complains all the time, but here, like in Minnesota, we have an amazing recovery community. That is you can get engaged to, but it's not going to come to you. Like, right? You can't just sit there and wait in your living room or you're at your desk and like, okay, come to me now. No, it doesn't work that way. You have to go get it. Like, just like you did for your drugs or your alcohol or whatever it is, you went and sought it out. You have to do the same for recovery. Like, and it doesn't take as much effort as getting high, because I tell you all the time, getting high for me was like 2 full-time jobs. Procuring drugs, getting the money for drugs, buying the drugs, whatever, all that stuff. Like, you put half of that energy that you use to in your addiction into recovery, and it's actually pretty easy. So I tell people, just get connected. Go to, so me, I like going to the Capitol. If I'm really bored, when it's legislative time, I'll go sit in a hearing. Like I'll look at the hearing list for the day. Oh, this looks cool. I want to go learn more about this. I go sit in a hearing room. But I'm as an advocate, like that's my recovery is like, I love advocacy. So it's just whatever it is for you, but you got to find it. You got to find it early and quick. But get connected. There's plenty of opportunity. At least, like I said, in my area, there's a lot, but you can't just sit back and wait.
Yeah, not to mention also, like if someone's interested in 12-step recovery, like the whole premise of all of it is making people feel welcome so that they can get connected. And different groups have different philosophies and stuff, and some are more welcoming than others. But I'd say in general, you go to a 12-step meeting, and if you raise your hand and say, I'm an alcoholic, I have no friends, I need help, the response will be, at least 9 times out of 10, will be people coming up to you and offering help. Here's my phone number. Do you want to get coffee? That's great that you're in recovery. Do you have a sponsor? Do you have a big book? Do you have whatever the case is? But that's been my experience in 12-step recovery is people are very, very willing to help, especially the ones that have good recovery. So it also weeds out, because the people that have kind of shoddy, I just show up and do whatever recovery, they're not the ones who are offering to help the people who are in need of help. So literally by surrendering, you win. And I think that's great, great advice. Get connected. That's the way that you can grow your network, and, being able to pick up the phone and call somebody who has the experience that you do. Because I'm sure a lot of people who have been to prison, they'll get out and be like, nobody understands my story. And then you're like, I do. Absolutely. Here was mine, and this is what I did to get out. Because we're the only kind of people that somebody's down in a hole and they're trying to get out. All the doctors, family, they're all at the top giving directions. But the addicts, alcoholics, we're the ones that jump in and say, I've been in this hole. Here's what I did to get out. And taking people through, I think that's the whole basis of all of it. And moving forward, though, what's one thing that a business owner, entrepreneur, someone who's working their way up the ladder, what's one thing that they can do that by doing it will make everything else easier or unnecessary?
Ask for help.
Ask for help.
Serious. Even in my business, so I'm lucky. Over the last 5 years or so, I've been doing the work I currently am doing. I've amassed an amazing network, not only locally, but nationally. And when I need something, someone in my network knows it. It's just, and I'm not afraid. Honestly, if I'm looking for something, I'll just throw it on Facebook one day, say, hey, I need this. I need a bookkeeper or whatever. In seconds, you have 20 responses. Oh yeah, here's a person, or here's what you should do. Here's a connection. Don't be afraid. If you don't know it, it's okay. There's people that do, though. That's the best part. It's ask for help, no matter what it is. I don't care. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't let your ego get in the way, or people, this is a really dumb question. I'm not a fan. There's no such thing as a dumb question. You just don't, you're asking because you don't know the answer, right?
It's definitely a good shortcut, especially if you've got people in your network who know the answer. There's no downside to at least hearing someone else's experience with something. Why have to go through it yourself just to learn, man, I really should have gotten a lawyer to do that contract now that I got screwed over in this deal. That was for me. I had a giant acquisition with a company, and it was just, well, this guy seems like a good guy. We'll have a handshake deal. We don't have to get a lawyer involved. It's whatever. And then, I look at the opportunity cost from not doing it, and easily tens, probably hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost revenue because we didn't have a signature on what our agreement was. So, I would have preferred if someone said, oh, you're doing an acquisition, you should get a lawyer. But me, my ego, and my experience, I had 9 before that where a handshake was fine. They wanted to get out, and, handshake, here's the deal. But this one in particular, I didn't have a non-compete signed. I didn't have anything signed that said he wouldn't just start back up. And, it is what it is. I've learned from my mistake. But now when I hear people, I'm in the middle of a merger acquisition, I say, you should get a lawyer. They say, nah, it's just this old lady and she's just trying to get out. I was like, I don't care. I told myself that too. I'd have a lot more money now had I spent the money on the lawyer. But, and everybody was telling me, you should do it. And I said, no, I've got experience where it didn't work. So everyone's experience is different. But for anyone that's looking to grow their business through merger and acquisition, get a lawyer. Absolutely. It is worth it.
My wife insisted when I started my business 5 months ago, the first thing she says, get an accountant, they'll help you set up QuickBooks. They'll give you and it's whatever, 20, I get a really low $20 a month plan, but it's great. Anytime I have a question I email her, she emails right back here. And, and she usually doesn't charge me if it's just an email. If I have to meet face to face, there's a little bit, but thank God I did that. I don't know how I would have managed finances without just simple things like QuickBooks. And I'm glad I had someone to help me set that up because I couldn't have did it.
Yeah. Ask for help. Find people that know what you do not know, who have success doing it, and just copy paste. Success leaves clues, and it's literally that easy. But
I love it too. One thing just quick is that it's the recovery community. We're in every circle. There are people, and I love utilizing that, and they want to help that because part of I think the way we only keep what we have by giving it away, right? And however that can look a lot of different ways. So that's the cool part is people in recovery they're so willing. I think sometimes too willing. I find, because we pay bills, so sometimes we let that willingness get in the way of us paying our bills. But I love that's the service work. Sometimes just that advice is so crucial.
That's incredible. I couldn't agree with you anymore. But Randy, in wrapping up, it's been a great episode. Where can people find you online?
So, I mean, I'm Facebook is obviously an easy place to find me, Randy Anderson. You'll usually see me in some provocative T-shirt or holding a megaphone or something like that. So, pretty easy to find me. I do have a business now called Bold North Recovery and Consulting. So, it's www.boldnorthrecoveryandconsulting.com. I know it's a long, drawn-out name. I didn't want to be pigeonholed to a treatment center, so that's why I added the consulting part in the end. Yeah, I mean, that's the easiest place to find me. There's contact me on those, on both, Facebook Messenger. I use all forms of communication. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, not on, I have a Snapchat account, which I don't use, but yeah, Facebook is probably the easiest way, or through my website, boldnorthrecoveryandconsulting.com.
Perfect. Well, Randy, it was great having you on the show. For everybody listening, be sure to check out Randy and all the things that he's doing. Subscribe to the show, give us some feedback, comment on whatever platform you're listening to it on. And Randy, thanks for being on Self-Made and Sober.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here. And yeah, it was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to Self-Made and Sober. Be sure to join our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/SMC Mastermind, like Self-Made Coaching Mastermind. I hope you enjoyed the show, and be sure to subscribe and rate the show so you can get notified each Friday when we put out a new episode.